We are back on Kevin's 76 and it's looking a lot better, but it looks better on the other side of the engine. So as you can see, we have the headers and the side pipes installed. Now these side pipes you might go cheap and not buy the hooker header ones, but they were a bear to put in. So none of the holes would line up, so I had to go to my buddy's shop, and he has the big old drill press with the awesome drill bits, and had to drill out every one of the holes just a little bit in order to get them to fit. But we finally got all of these to fit, and so now we have to work on the other side. So you can see this is the size of a hole we didn't drill because we didn't need to, but you can see how all these other ones we made just a little bit bigger, because if you didn't, they wouldn't line up. And we looked online, and it's a crazy complaint that everybody has about these not fitting because the holes don't line up. All the people have to do is make their drill bits one little tiny size bigger, and no one will ever have any problems, but they can't do that. So sadly, that's what we had to resort to, and it took half a day to do it, but we will now get this in. It's super satisfying when things finally fit. So boom, the headers are in and all the bolts are in. They're all tight. It's super exciting. It took forever, but I'm going to show you guys something. So this is a wide body. Obviously it's this much bigger than the rest of a normal, or the door is that much bigger than a normal Corvette, and I want to show you guys this. So it rained a couple times. You see that? There's water inside the doors. Now the doors are supposed to drain out this hole right here, which on a normal door this would be the lowest point, but since they added this much, there's really no drain point except for maybe with this corner where they didn't finish. So in order to drain the doors, I'm just going to take a drill and drill some drain holes in the very edge, the back edge, so that way it'll drain. But yeah, I got a big surprise when I opened this door to start putting on this side pipe, and water got on me, and I was like, what? Fun fact, when you build a wide body, you have to add drain holes to the doors. The worst part about this, now my work spot's all wet, but I couldn't let it not drain. In order to finish up the side pipe install, we have to do something about the rockers. So as you can see on this side, there's no rocker, and from far away it doesn't look that good. It just looks unfinished. I've seen so many cars with side pipes that don't have the rocker channels in them, and not a fan. So if we walk around this side, you can see that I have already installed that. But the main thing you have to do is you basically have to cut a notch out at the front, because obviously the pipes are coming from the side instead of out the back of the car. So this is what I cut out, basically that much. And the only way you're going to be able to tell is you look in the front and you see that there's nothing right here, but that's okay because I did a straight cut and it looks good. And then once you get, it only goes to about here, and once you get to here, it's full all the way down. So other than that, that's all the cutting I did, and it looks really good. I'm going to cut the other side, we're going to put it on, and basically what you have to do is you have to jam the small piece that's from here to here in between the body and the side pipe. I had a little bit extra problem just because, this car's a wide body, so I mean, look how deep it all has to get. So you slide it all in that way, and then it falls back down, and then you attach it and you're good to go. So almost done with this side pipe install. It's been a pain in the butt, but almost done. Watching the last video, Kevin decided that his valve covers were cheap and crappy, and you know what? He's not wrong. So these stamped steel valve covers, the problem that they have is these holes, when you tighten them down, they kind of bow in, and what that does is it makes an uneven seal on the gasket. And you can see this gasket, it's old, it's failed, but it was letting all kinds of oil leak down onto the exhaust. Now I've cleaned it up, but what you want to look for before you put a new valve cover on is you want to make sure that these oil passages are clear, which they are on both sides, and you want to make sure each rocker arm is wet. Make sure you don't have any dry ones. You can also kind of wiggle them around and see how loose they are. These ones feel okay. I mean, they should have some looseness, but they shouldn't be. You shouldn't have any that are going side to side really crazy. So Kevin's bought some new valve covers, and I'll show you what those look like. Here are the new valve covers, and honestly, they're beautiful. So these are aluminum, which means they won't flex when you tighten them down, and I like that a lot better. The only thing you need to concern yourself with is you might need longer bolts in order to make up this extra distance, but other than that, these are some beautiful looking covers, and we'll throw them on. Look at these beautiful headers and spark plug wire looms. I don't know if you guys remember what the beginning of this video looked, or the beginning of this car looked like, but it was not this clean. So we have the water pump hooked up, we have the alternator hooked up correctly. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? The correct pulleys, the correct water pump. It looks really, really good. Same here on this side. We have all the spark plug wires ready to go. So Kevin ordered a different carburetor for this car. Actually the same carburetor, just new. One of the reasons why is because this does not have an electric choke on it, and he wanted that, so it got ordered up. It also will give me a chance to sort out all this bracketry. I mean, the kickdown cable for the transmission's not even hooked up, all that kind of stuff, and also clean this intake, make it look just a little bit better. Once that's done, we can fill it full of coolant, so we can hook up the hoses and change the oil, and we can fire it up and hit run. Here's the intake with the old carburetor off of it, and it looks pretty good down there. Like I said, this car was thrown together by just whatever parts whoever did it had. I mean, everything's just, I don't want to call it a junkyard motor or a junkyard build, but that's kind of like what it was. Everything that was put together kind of just was thrown in. So have the heater, I guess the heater core is bypassed, and that's how it was when I got the car. We're just going to keep it the same way and do it just like that, and we can now fill it full of coolant because the cooling system is now complete and ready to go. I still have to wire up the fans, but I'll do that at the same time that I wire up the electric choke. After that, we can put the carburetor on, and then it's harness time, which is going to be fun. You guys will enjoy the harnesses. With the new carburetor on, there's a couple things we have to do. Obviously bolt it on, but the fuel fitting right here, the problem with this is you have any kind of air cleaner base at all that's not like the Fly Eye air cleaner, this will hit it. So I told Kevin to buy this 90-degree. Basically it points it downwards, and with that the fuel line won't be sticking out like this. This is what it would be doing, and it would be in the way. You can actually run it down the valve cover like this and then up, which clears all the linkages and it looks 1,000 times better. The other thing we need to do is for the brake booster, we need to put that fitting in the back, and then obviously hook up the electric choke. I like to hook up the electric choke to the wiper motor because that's 12 volts key with the key, and that's what you need. It's also fused, so if anything happens, it'll blow a fuse and you'll be fine. But before we go to all that trouble with wiring that stuff up, we're going to have to do these harnesses. I'm sorry to say, they have to be done. I'll tell you what, this engine is looking better and better. The only thing that will make it even perfect is if the distributor cap was black and that bracket was not bright red. Other than that, it would look great. Next we're going to work on these wiring harnesses. So we plug in back there, and I'm going to unplug them and pull all of this stuff out. Kevin bought new stuff, let's put it in. You'll notice there's no wiring in this engine bay. Why am I excited about it? Because it was pretty awful. The only thing really left is the AC harness wiring, which sadly has a lot of bubba still left in it, but since there's no air conditioning or anything like that, we're just going to leave that alone for now. Kevin has bought new harnesses, but let's take a look at the old ones. So there's two harnesses. There's your front light harness and then basically your engine harness. And the front light harness wasn't too bad. The worst was up here by where the alternator goes together. There's a lot of electrical tape like this that I'm just scared to know what's underneath that. I know they spliced a whole bunch of extra stuff in order to get the fans to work, but the rest of the harness looks pretty good. The only real bubba that I found was one of the sockets for the lights. Let's see, they attach like right here, a little plug. One of them was pretty much duct taped on, so that wasn't too bad. But the worst one is this main harness. I mean, this is all extra, all this right here. It was made to run those radiator fans. I don't know what in the world they were thinking, but It's all zip tied and tied up into here, and I mean, just who really who knows what's going on. So the wires for the starter were okay, but the rest of it, I mean, just scary stuff. So it's all gonna go in the trash, and we're all gonna get new stuff. Here is the new harness, and I just love them because, I mean, everything's brand new, nothing's brittle, nothing's crumbling. All the connections are, you know, nice and shiny. It even comes with this diagram that basically tells you exactly where everything goes, which is great. One thing I will say is that when you put these in, what you need to do is there's prongs inside of this master plug. Push them in with like a screwdriver and make sure that they don't push in easily, because I've had it in the past where I've pushed these in and then the actual wires in this plug will push out. They won't go into where they need to go. So another check you can do is just eyeball these wires versus your old harness and make sure they're the same. They usually do it pretty good. I mean, it's, you know, for 1976. Luckily 1976 didn't change much mid-year, so there's not much of a problem. But I'm going to go ahead and do that and then install these, and then we'll be almost free of the bubba inside the engine bay. When I pulled the old harness out, they had, for some bizarre reason, ran basically the end of it that runs all the front lights along the bottom. It was along the radiator support all the way down here, which is silly, but it's supposed to run along this top lip, and it has these little push-ins so you can do that. Now, something interesting you saw in the previous video was that all the wiring was up over the radiator support when it's supposed to go through this little slot right here in between the fender and the support. The interesting thing is it won't fit if you have the plugs that go into these. Here's an example of that plug. Basically it goes in. They made them removable so that they could attach the harness with the car all together. These are going to run your front blinkers right here at the bottom. So the only way to get this harness in there is to take those out. And other than that, I mean, it's just going in like it's supposed to, with the alternators all wired up and looking really good to sender, and then it's all just beautiful and loomed all along here. When you think something's going to be a real easy thing, it never ever turns out that way. So putting in these grills is like 5 screws. It's not that hard to do. But when you have Bubba, he always makes it harder. So the car came with these grills put in like this. And if you look at the normal front of a 75 to 79 Corvette, the grills actually don't stick out this far. They're not flush with the bumper. They're actually back about 1 inch. And I'll show you what happened. So this is an aftermarket fiberglass bumper, which is good, but it came with these tabs that honestly you don't need. So what happened was Bubba couldn't figure out how to get this grill in here without the lens hitting right there. So what he decided to do was take the lens out and just put the grills in and call it done. And then, you know, sort of figure out some kind of, who knows what is this thing right here. I don't know what it is. So what we're going to do is what you're supposed to do. We're going to put the grills in the way they're supposed to be put in, which is recessed a little bit. So it's about fingertip length deeper. You can see there the brackets, the factory brackets are there, but it'll sit about, you know, this farther back. But what I have to do is I have to cut all these parts of the bumper out. It's not that big of a deal. It's just another thing that takes time, but it will look better and more correct once we're done. There it is. So you can see how it's inset just a little bit along that edge right there, and of course along the top. But it looks way better. I had to cut all those tabs out, but I also had to bend these brackets. There's these brackets here. You know, they are adjustable, so you can move them in and out and stuff like that. But I had to adjust them on the other side. I think I'm gonna have to do it on this side too. But this little goofy thing, get that stuff out of here. Let's put it together right. There it is, final product. So they're still a little dirty. They could use some cleaning, but I just think that looks way better than those goofy white ones. Plus, it now has light, so people can see when you turn. You know, it's kind of important. So that wraps up the headlight harness. Pretty much it's all there. The only thing we need to figure out is the horns, whether they work or not. But now we can move on to the engine harness, which should take even less time. I'm really convinced that the people who owned this before had no idea what they were doing. So here's a couple things. One, this transmission needs vacuum in order to shift. So I added this port right here, but there's supposed to be a metal tube that runs down here to the modulator on the transmission. Never had it. So obviously they never drove this car out of first gear because they don't shift without vacuum. Second, you have this throttle bracket, which is super goofy, but what you have right here, this is the kickdown for the transmission. So when you stomp on it, it'll downshift and accelerate. As you can see, not happening here. There's not even a bracket for it. So I have a metal tube for the transmission right here. I'm going to put that in. And then I also have this bracket, which will take place of this one for the kickdown cable. I also have another chrome bracket, which I left in the other room, that will move the accelerator cable over to make room for the kickdown cable, which is supposed to go here. I still need to buy a bracket for the spring to move the spring forward to make everything work. And it's amazing the amount of work it takes to do it right and how little work it takes to do it wrong. So we'll get it figured out, we'll get it done. You guys heard how awesome this car sounds. So, a couple things. Smoke is coming out of the pipes because they're brand new, so they're going to get hot for the first time. Same with a little bit of smoke coming out of the engine. There's a lot of stuff we need to check. So the first thing that we need to check is leaks from the valve covers. We have to check for fuel leaks. We have to check for water leaks. Make sure the water is full, which I'm going to do here in a second. The alternator that we put in with the new belt, it charges. Sweet, so that's a win. We have to make sure that none of our spark plug wires are burning up. They shouldn't be. I spent a lot of time routing them really, really nicely. And then from there, we got to check timing, do a little bit of tuning on the carb. Look at this. Of course, there's no timing tabs. Of course, why wouldn't there be? Why would you have timing tabs? Who needs those? And then we have to make sure the fans and those come on so the car doesn't overheat. And once we figure out those things, I think we can then check the transmission fluid, because remember, the car leaks like crazy. Mostly when the front's up and it leaks out the tail shaft, which we'll fix eventually, but I want to drive it. I want to make sure this transmission is good before we start doing a bunch of the other things on this car. And I also have to make sure the transmission has enough fluid to drive it. So a lot of little things we got to check before we can hit the road, but we should be good.